Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber CCSO Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Welcome to the Bare Metal Cyber CSO Prepcast. This series helps you prepare for the exam with focused explanations and practical context. Security controls are the foundational elements of every mature information security program. They are safeguards or countermeasures designed to reduce the risk associated with specific threats or vulnerabilities. These controls serve multiple purposes. Some are designed to prevent an attack from happening in the first place. Others are meant to detect an incident as it unfolds. And still others aim to correct damage or recover operations after an event. Controls also help support compliance with regulatory requirements, enforce internal governance standards, and ensure that day-to-day operations are performed securely. Effective control implementation helps align the organization's security activities with its risk appetite and overarching business priorities. For executives and boards, controls are how security strategy becomes measurable action. Without well-selected and maintained controls, even the best governance frameworks remain theoretical. Controls form the operational layer of a defensible, auditable, and strategically aligned security posture. Security controls can be grouped into several broad categories. Administrative controls focus on policies, procedures, security awareness, and training programs. These controls define human behavior and institutional expectations. Technical controls, sometimes called logical controls, include software solutions, system configurations, and technology-based safeguards such as firewalls or encryption. Physical controls address the protection of facilities and assets, including locks, guards, surveillance systems, and physical access badges. In practice, many controls span multiple categories, particularly in hybrid or cloud-based environments. For example, access control may include administrative policy, technical enforcement via software, and physical restrictions on data center access. A balanced control environment deploys all three categories in complementary ways. The CISO is responsible for ensuring that the organization's security controls are not concentrated too heavily in one area while neglecting others. A balanced approach improves defense in depth and ensures coverage across all relevant risk domains. Controls can also be classified based on their function. Preventive controls are designed to stop security incidents before they occur. These include firewalls, security training, and authentication systems. Detective controls identify that an event has occurred or is in progress. Examples include intrusion detection systems, security monitoring tools, and audit logs. Corrective controls work to restore normal operations after an incident. These include backup systems, incident response procedures, and recovery tools. Deterrent controls serve a psychological purpose by discouraging potential attackers or violators. Warning banners and visible security presence are examples. Compensating controls are used when a primary control cannot be implemented due to cost, feasibility, or legacy limitations. They offer alternate protection that satisfies the intent of the original requirement. Understanding these functional types is essential for designing layered defense strategies and for addressing gaps where specific control implementations are not practical or possible. Security controls should be aligned with recognized industry frameworks. These frameworks, such as ISO 27301, NIST Special Publication 853, and the CIS Controls, provide structured catalogs of controls based on different levels of organizational maturity and risk tolerance. Mapping an organization's controls to one or more frameworks helps ensure consistency, supports internal and external audits, and allows benchmarking against industry peers. Frameworks also define control baselines that are appropriate for different types of organizations or risk environments. This helps security leaders select appropriate controls without having to start from scratch. Framework alignment also simplifies compliance reporting. For example, aligning to NIST 853 may help demonstrate readiness for FISMA audits, while ISO 27001 alignment can support global certification and vendor expectation. One of the CISO's responsibilities is to translate the intent of these frameworks into controls that work in the organization's specific context. This means going beyond checklist implementation and ensuring that each control functions effectively in real-world scenarios. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other podcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Control selection and prioritization must be driven by informed decision-making. The CISO must consider several key factors. These include the criticality of the assets being protected, the current and emerging threat landscape, and any applicable legal or regulatory requirements. Risk assessments play a critical role in guiding this selection process. They help identify which controls are most urgently needed, how deeply they must be implemented, and where limited resources will have the greatest effect. Financial justification is also part of the equation. Cost-benefit analysis helps determine whether a proposed control is worth the investment. In some cases, a high-cost control may be necessary to meet compliance, while in others, it may be optional if residual risk is acceptable. Controls must also be aligned with the organization's operational complexity and culture. If a control creates too much disruption, it may be resisted or bypassed. For high-cost or high-impact controls, executive approval is often required. This ensures that the organization's leaders understand the trade-offs and accept the implications of the decision. Security controls follow a defined life cycle from design to decommissioning. The first phase is design, during which the intent and purpose of the control are clearly defined. The design process includes identifying what threats the control addresses, how it functions, and how success will be measured. The implementation phase follows. This involves configuring systems, integrating controls into business workflows, and ensuring that users understand the control's presence and purpose. Once implemented, the control enters the operational phase. This is where it is used daily and monitored for effectiveness. Controls must be reviewed periodically. This review phase includes testing, performance analysis, and updates based on lessons learned from incidents or audits. Finally, controls may need to be decommissioned or replaced when business needs change, technologies evolve, or the risk landscape shifts. This lifecycle model helps ensure that controls remain relevant, effective, and integrated into the broader security program. Measuring the effectiveness of controls is essential for accountability and assurance. A control is not useful unless it works as intended. Effectiveness can be assessed through testing, such as vulnerability scans or penetration tests, and through operational metrics, such as alert frequency or response time. Audit evidence is another form of assurance. Logs, screenshots, and configurations can all be used to show that a control is active and functioning. Over time, controls can degrade in effectiveness. This may happen due to changes in the environment, system upgrades, user workarounds, or simply evolving threat techniques. Controls must be enforceable, meaning they can't be ignored or bypassed, and they must be measurable so that performance can be tracked. Regular assurance activities help validate that controls are functioning, provide evidence for compliance, and allow the CISO to maintain confidence in the organization's defensive posture. At the executive level, the CISO has several responsibilities related to controls. First, the CISO must ensure that control deployment aligns with governance structures and the organization's overall risk tolerance. Controls are not isolated tools. They must support broader goals, from compliance to resilience to operational efficiency. The CISO is also responsible for maintaining an accurate inventory of all controls, tracking their ownership, lifecycle phase, and effectiveness. Reporting control status to executive stakeholders is another key responsibility. These reports must translate technical data into strategic language, showing how control performance affects risk exposure or compliance standing. The CISO also plays a role in approving exceptions to control requirements, making decisions about residual risk, and escalating issues to the board when necessary. Control investments, especially large projects like endpoint detection platforms or identity governance systems, require executive approval. The CISO must present the case for these controls based on business impact, risk reduction, and strategic alignment. Managing security controls is not without its challenges. Large organizations often face complexity and redundancy. Multiple systems may offer similar controls, leading to overlap and confusion. Misconfigured controls are another common issue. A firewall rule that is too permissive or a logging system that is not actively monitored can give the illusion of security without actual protection. Over-reliance on technical controls can also be a problem, especially if policies and human factors are ignored. Even the best tools will fail if users do not follow procedures or if enforcement is inconsistent. Cultural resistance can undermine control effectiveness, especially when controls interfere with productivity or convenience. Additionally, the rise of shadow IT, technology used outside official channels, and rapid shifts to third-party services or cloud platforms can create gaps in control coverage. The CISO must remain aware of these challenges and work to address them through communication, integration, and regular oversight. The CA CISO exam places strong emphasis on security control knowledge. Candidates must understand control terminology, including the different types and categories, as well as how controls function in practice. Scenario-based questions may require selecting an appropriate control, interpreting test results, or identifying reasons why a control failed. Other questions may focus on executive decision-making. For example, candidates might need to assess whether a proposed control justifies its cost, or whether a control exception should be granted. Understanding how controls relate to governance frameworks, audit processes, and operational risk is also essential. The exam expects candidates to demonstrate not just knowledge of individual controls, but a strategic understanding of how controls are selected, deployed, measured, and integrated into enterprise-wide security. Mastery of these concepts shows that the candidate is prepared to lead not only the technical aspects of security, but also the executive oversight required for long-term organizational resilience. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Bare Metal Cyber CISO Prepcast. For more episodes, tools, and study support, visit us at baremetalcyber.com.